for 10 Downing Street. This is me, Ishita Mitra.
And me, Shashank Mattu.
So on this episode, we are going to answer a few questions for you. What is the role of Indian diaspora in the coming elections?
And will Rishi Sunak lead his party to its worst ever electoral defeat in the last 100 years?
And we've also got some ground reports lined up for you from our reporter Lavina Tandon. In every election, there are some voters whose allegiance is not fixed and their vote is up for grabs at the ballot box. They are called swing voters. Indian diaspora is one such group of voters in the UK.
It is one of the largest immigrant groups in the country and also happens to be one of the highest earning groups in the UK.
So as their numbers grow, their political stature has also been growing. According to 2021 UK census, the population of Indian voters currently stands at about 1.8 million. This is about 3% of the population. A record high number of 15 Indian origin politicians entered the UK's House of Commons in 2019 elections. So a key question arises now. Which way Indian voters will swing in this election? Let's take a look at how they've voted in the past. Indian voters have been traditionally aligned towards Labour, but of late their support has been dwindling. According to a survey, their support for the Labour Party dropped from about 46% in 2014 to around 38% in 2020. In the 2019 general elections, about 30% of the British Indians supported Labour. Now this shift is more visible among Hindus and Christians as compared to Sikhs and Muslims. And this is primarily due to socio-cultural reasons. Labour's stand on the Kashmir issue, especially under the leadership of Jeremy Corbyn, is one of the responsible factors for its declining share. And even now, Muslim vote has been drifting away from the party. Why? Well, due to the party's stance on Gaza war. Socially and culturally, British Indians seem more aligned with the Conservatives now. And this shift had set in by about 2015 and now it is gaining more momentum. So as elections approach, Labour has been trying to rectify its policy. It has been trying to reach out to more Indians. It has created a group called Labour Indians to connect with British Indian voters. The party has also hired 2 community outreach volunteers and even organised a trip to India for its 2 senior shadow ministers. While this is what Labour has been doing, Conservatives have also been putting their own measures to retain their voter base. Our reporter Lavina Tandon also spoke to some experts on the ground on this issue. Let's hear it.
I'm here with Sophie Starwams from UK in the Changing Europe, and their group has done a huge research on where and how the ethnic minorities in the UK might vote in the general elections in July 2024. Indian origin people, and that would include the British Indians or British Asians as well as they are deemed under. So traditionally they were seen to be as Labour voters. Would you contradict that? And also, number 2, they were seen to be moving towards the Tory party thanks to last time Jeremy Corbyn's comment on Kashmir. Now, tell me, in the light of this, where do they stand now?
So I think we are still seeing that shift probably among British Indians to the Conservatives. It was definitely sped up by Jeremy Corbyn's comments on Kashmir and that resolution that the Labour Party made. I think it was at the 2017 party conference. And it was also sped up by Brexit. We know that British Indians, more than any other ethnic group, voted to leave the European Union. Obviously 2019, the Conservative Party was the party of getting Brexit done. And so we saw those 2 things sort of sped up that shift towards the Conservative Party. What we're not sure of is how fast, that movement towards the Conservatives from Labour amongst British Indians will be without those other 2 circumstances.
In terms of the British Indian or Indian origin voters, how do you see their mood?
Well, I think they are a kind of a wildcard group in this electorate, in that we have been seeing evidence in the last few elections that their traditional alignment with Labour, there were more Labour than we would expect them to be given their attitudes and social backgrounds, that might be starting to break down and that they might be voting for the Conservatives in larger numbers. But we simply don't have very good and reliable data on this. So it is a group in the electorate with the capacity to surprise, because they might be changing, but we don't know how quickly they're changing or how much they're changing. So I, for one, will be watching closely some of the seats with very large Indian and Hindu populations, such as Leicester East, because those seem like the kind of seats that might deliver a surprise on election day.
Could they swing at all? The election result? No.
I mean,
There were very few seats where they're big enough to swing the election result. Leicester East is one.
I think, as Sophie said in the presentation, this could be an issue in future elections because the size of the swing to Labour now is so big, and
Kind of
quite
drowns
often
it out.
these ethnic minority populations
Correct.
are in seats where Labour just have huge majorities.
Anyway.
Yeah.
Yeah, but
Yeah.
it's an issue for elections to come.
I mean, Leicester East is certainly an interesting one.
Because it's a very unusual set of candidates there as well,
Yes.
because you've got Claudia Webb, the former Labour MP, and you've got Keith Vaz, the MP before that,
And
and
then
you've
you
got
have Rajesh Agarwal.
and you've got a council where the Conservatives have done extremely well in the last local elections, in particular by winning lots of Hindu majority wards. So it does feel like a place where change is underway.
Any other seat that comes to mind? I don't.
That it's going to be close because of this. I don't know.
I mean, I think that the seats in Harrow in London, there's one seat that's Conservative there that I think has a very large Hindu population, but I think it's the issue that Anna has talked about is Hindu voters, unlike, say, Hindu and Indian voters, unlike Muslim voters and voters from Pakistan and Bangladesh, Muslim voters tend to be very clustered together, which means that there's a few
Who's
seats.
clusters together, sorry?
Muslim
Muslim
voters.
voters, yes.
So there's a number of seats you can point to where they're a really big group, whereas Hindu voters are much more spread out. So there's lots and lots of seats where you might get 5, 10, 15% Hindu, but very few where you get like 30, 40, 50, which means that even if they were behaving distinctively, all they would do is kind of reduce the overall swing to Labour rather than sort of shifting the result.
Got it. In terms of the Muslim voters, as you said, that they vote in bulk, Gaza has been a huge issue with Keir Starmer. Do you think that will shift or is shifting anything?
But I mean, it is another X factor in the election, because here's another group where we've got good evidence they've behaved distinctively recently, but we don't have good polling evidence about where they stand in the general election. So we can definitely see very consistent evidence in the May local elections that in wards with very large Muslim populations there was a really big drop in the Labour vote, and it's clear why. The Gaza issue has played very strongly with that group, and it plays into a narrative of Labour don't respect us, don't reflect our values, don't listen to us. But local elections are much lower stakes. So this could be a kind of protest vote. This could be, we're not happy, we're going to use this vote as a chance to sort of express that, but then in a general election, much higher stakes. And the question becomes whether or not that anger about that specific issue on foreign policy still has the same electoral impact when it's weighed against. You know, Muslim voters' issue agenda is the same as everybody else. They also care about public services, hospitals, cost of living, the NHS, and those things are now on the agenda in a way that they weren't in the local election.
In terms of the result, do you think, we know that Labour could be winning, but do you think we'll have an opposition in the form of Tory, or it's going to be a coalition opposition, or it's going to be Reform?
I mean, it's very hard to say. I mean, Mike, if you asked me to make a wild guess, the Conservatives will be Her Majesty's loyal opposition party.
Yeah, I mean, it can't be Reform. The geography of the Reform vote and the nature of the Reform vote in terms of a low ceiling means even if Reform got more votes than the Conservatives, they'd have far fewer seats. The only thing that a very high Reform vote will do is mean that instead of a Conservative opposition, we would have a Liberal Democrat opposition. There's no way to get to a Reform opposition, I think.
Brilliant, thank you very, very much.
As the elections approach, Rishi Sunak and his Conservative Party are facing a historic defeat. If poll numbers are right, the Conservatives are set to lose over 200 seats. That is a massive defeat, and it would be their worst election result in over 100 years. But what went so wrong for Rishi Sunak and his party? The most important thing you have to keep in mind is that the UK has been hit by a massive number of crises over the last couple of years. We've talked about some of them before, but let's just go through them again. The first is the economy. The country is suffering through a period of low growth and is performing a lot worse than other major developed economies in Europe and North America. At the same time, there's also a major cost of living crisis. Basically, things in the UK have gotten a lot more expensive over a very short period of time. Inflation reached a 40-year high in October 2022 and has only just come down recently. This has made the United Kingdom poorer and its citizens very, very angry at the government. Public services have also been crumbling. and immigration, especially by asylum seekers from Turkey, Iran and Afghanistan, have overwhelmed Britain's government. This is a grim picture for the country. And since the Conservative Party has been in power for the last 14 years, it has received much of the blame. If you look at the polls, massive majorities of public opinion believe that the government has mishandled almost every major issue, from health and defense to immigration and the economy. That is a setback for a party that was once seen to be experienced, stable and moderate. But the party has only itself to blame. The Conservatives have been hopelessly divided over the last few years between its moderate and extremist wings, who have been clashing for influence. This has created much instability for the UK, which has seen 4 Conservative Prime Ministers in just the last 8 years. Rishi Sunak himself was a victim of this extremism when he lost to Liz Truss, who was the previous Prime Minister, and now himself is taking a much more extremist position on issues like gender and immigration. Now, all of this is contributing to a major backlash, with around 2/3 of voters saying that the Conservatives do not deserve to be re-elected. Now, Rishi Sunak is part of the problem here. He has tried to pitch himself as an experienced administrator with a clear plan to provide for the country's future. Unfortunately for Sunak, he seems to lack the political charisma and experience needed to pull his party out of the hole it has dug itself into. Analysts point out that his lack of political experience and his wooden style of campaigning are major liabilities for the Conservative Party. He's also seen as out of touch with ordinary citizens. He's also seen as unlikable and unable to take strong and decisive decisions. At this point in time, Sunak trails far behind his Labour opponent Keir Starmer in favourability ratings. In fact, a record 72% of Britons see Sunak unfavourably, which is something of an embarrassing record for him. Now, this is a bad fall for Sunak, who was once so popular in the country for his decisive actions as Chancellor or Finance Minister during the COVID-19 pandemic.
So which way will Indian voters swing? Only time can tell. But what's the mood on the ground? Let's take a look.
I'm here in the Richmond Green, amazing part of London, and I'm here with Pranav Kodu, who is playing cricket. Very true to his Indian roots. There is T20 going on, and there is elections here in the UK. So tell me, Pranav, and Rishi Sunak, one Indian origin, he's been the Prime Minister and is fighting for one. What do you think of him, and if you may say, where do your loyalties lie?
Sure, yeah. Well, I'm from India. But I think the problem I have with, generally, it's not about Rishi Sunak or one person. Both the parties have not been very clear about their agenda. It's all very high level. They're talking about NHS, they're talking about police forces, they're talking about immigration. But I just wish that they would go deeper and explain what is their plan. Last time I voted for the Conservative Party, it was more a tactical voting. I thought that they would know how the whole Brexit process would work, because they were the ones who initiated it. But clearly, I feel that that's not been sorted out properly. There are things to be improved. Infrastructure, again, education, universities, government services, all of them have to improve. Unemployment has to get down. So, lots of things have to change. So some of these topics should have check boxes only then,
And no one is doing that for you as of now?
Only, I would say, like high-level lip service. Not enough details for me to decide that this party is better versus that party is better.
Okay. Tell me, what about you? Where do you stand in this election at the moment?
Deeply unexcited by the campaign, I suppose. Not really enjoying any of it very much. I've always voted Labour all my life, but I don't think I'll vote Labour this time. Although, I guess I hope Labour win in a strange kind of way. I don't see enough difference between Labour and the Conservatives. I will vote Green. Because I think the only issue that really matters is the sustainability of the planet, and they're the only ones who've got any sort of policy that will actually make a difference to the survival of mankind, I suppose.
Okay. Now, what do you think of Rishi Sunak and up to now?
I have nothing especially against Rishi. I think he's a whole lot better than the ones that went before. But I think his party's an absolute mess. I think his policies are a mess. I think he's reaching out for anything that people find popular at the minute. I think he knows he's going to lose, so he can say whatever he wants at the moment.
Rishi Sunak, what I've seen, he's tried his best. He's obviously, not everything is in hand. Like the decisions what he makes. But I think his intention was very good. and yeah, I see him coming up again.
So your economic reasons are what you will see when you vote?
Definitely, yeah, those are there, and plus NHS health-wise, those facilities, that will be more important as well.
Who ticks your box as of now?
Rishi, I'll say, definitely.
Thank you. There are always ifs and buts at the moment, and definitely are there amongst people who are still making up their minds. So political parties still have chance to grab their votes, and what ticks their boxes are of course the economy and how it shows up on the bank balance. Cost of living crisis has been huge here, a huge consideration. NHS is a huge thing as well, but as of now many people undecided, but there are others who are completely sure that, especially the experts and the pollsters, that Tory is definitely not the party that's going to make up to the top.
So that's it for this episode. As we inch closer to the D-Day, we'll continue to bring you more updates from UK elections.
Thank you for watching India Today Global.